All right, let's get into it. We're about to pull back the curtain on some really cool, unseen science that, believe it or not, keeps your lights on every single day. This is all about monitoring the vital signs of our power grid's most important equipment and the amazing tech that stops disasters before they happen.
So take a look at this. This is a high-voltage bushing. Now you can think of it as a super specialized high-stakes gateway. Its whole job is to let massive amounts of electricity flow safely from a power line into a transformer, all while making sure that immense voltage doesn't just short-circuit on the transformer's metal body. It's a pretty crucial job.
But here's the catch. Deep inside this thing, the insulation can break down over time. And when it fails, it almost never gives you a warning. It's just sudden. And that leads to catastrophic equipment blowouts and, you guessed it, potentially huge blackouts. So figuring out its health isn't just important, it's non-negotiable if you want a stable power grid.
So what exactly is this invisible threat? And why is it so darn hard to see it coming before it's way too late? Well, the answer is kind of ironic. It's hidden in the very material that's supposed to be protecting everything.
Okay, let's meet the hero and also kind of the victim of our story. Oil-Impregnated paper, or OIP. For more than 100 years, this stuff, this combo of special craft paper soaked in mineral oil, has been the absolute backbone of high-voltage insulation. It's an incredible material, for sure, but it's not invincible.
You see, OIP insulation has these two arch-enemies that are always at work: moisture and aging. Moisture is just a killer. It wrecks the paper's ability to insulate, it can cause dangerous vapor bubbles when things get hot, and it hits the fast-forward button on the whole aging process. And then aging comes along and breaks down the paper structure, which, you guessed it, makes it a perfect sponge for even more moisture. It's this vicious cycle that just eats away at the insulation from the inside out.
So the big challenge for engineers is, how do you see this slow internal decay without literally taking apart a multi-ton piece of equipment? Well, this is where a really brilliant diagnostic technique enters the picture.
This comparison just says it all, right? For decades, the old standard test gave you basically one number, a single, lonely data point. It's like taking one photograph. But frequency domain spectroscopy, or FDS, is like upgrading from that single photo to a full-on high-definition movie. It scans the insulation across thousands of different frequencies, and that gives you this incredibly rich, detailed picture of its health. You know, a great way to think about it is like a medical ultrasound, but for the power grid. It's a totally non-intrusive scan. It sends signals through the insulation, and then it listens to how they respond. And that response, that full spectrum of data, tells you a detailed story about what's really going on inside that oil-impregnated paper. But of course, there's a catch. Getting all this amazing data is one thing. Actually understanding what it's trying to tell you, well, that's the real puzzle. These signals are not always straightforward. When you get an FDS curve back from a test, it's not a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, not at all. It's a complex mix of different signals all layered on top of each other. You've got signals from the oil, signals from the paper, its age, and, the big one, how much moisture is trapped inside. And the thing that makes this so tricky is a phenomenon researchers call the compensation effect. Basically, the electrical fingerprints of moisture and aging, they can look really, really similar. They just overlap in the data. So you could have an old but very dry insulation that gives you a curve looking confusingly like one from a brand new but very wet insulation. It's a real diagnostic mystery.
So how do experts solve this mystery? This is where the real innovation kicks in. We're going to open up the interpreter's toolkit and see how you go from just a raw signal to a crystal clear diagnosis.
Okay, the first and most established advanced method is pretty cool. You basically build a digital twin, a virtual copy of the insulation's internal electrical structure.
This is done with something called the extended Debye model. Engineers use some seriously powerful algorithms to create a virtual circuit, just resistors and capacitors, that perfectly mimics the real FDS curve they got from the field. Then, by analyzing the values of these virtual parts, they can mathematically pull apart the effects of moisture from the effects of aging. It's brilliant.
The second approach is a little different. It's less about building a model from the ground up and more like, well, it's like using facial recognition, but for electrical signals. For this method, researchers spend a ton of time in the lab. They prepare hundreds of insulation samples with exactly known moisture levels and aging conditions. They measure the FDS curve for every single one and build this massive reference library.
So when a new measurement comes in from a real piece of equipment, algorithms just scan the library for the closest match, and bam, you get an incredibly accurate assessment of its condition almost instantly.
And that brings us to the third and newest approach, which is to train an artificial intelligence to become a diagnostic expert. And this makes the whole process not just accurate, but unbelievably fast.
See, a full FDS task can take about 30 minutes, and that's mostly because of the really low-frequency measurements. But what researchers have found is that machine learning models, like random forest regression, can be trained to see the telltale signs of moisture and aging using just a tiny slice of the high-frequency data. This means they can make a confident diagnosis in a fraction of the time. We're talking minutes instead of half an hour.
Now, these advanced techniques aren't just for academic papers. They have a direct, powerful, real-world impact on the reliability of the power that we all depend on. And this time savings, it's a total game changer. Knocking almost half an hour off of every single test means crews can check way more equipment in a single day. This lets them scale up their ability to monitor the health of the entire grid, and it lets them shift from reacting to failures to actually predicting them. So what's the bottom line? This advanced analysis delivers incredible results. We can now figure out the exact moisture content, we can estimate how much life is left in these critical assets, and we can even pinpoint a tiny faulty seal that's letting moisture sneak in. It lets utilities move from a fail and fix strategy to a predict and prevent one. And the ultimate payoff is a stronger, much more resilient power grid for every single one of us.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've essentially created a crystal ball to see the future health of our electrical grid's most vital parts. So the question is, where else can we apply this kind of deep predictive power? What other hidden failures in all of our critical infrastructure can we bring into the light before they ever get a chance to happen?